Welcome. Thank you for joining us for webinar 5 of a series of 6 webinars which support participants in Samsung's Solve for Tomorrow competition. My name is Julie Baker. I'm the Education Manager at Auckland's MOTAT, and I'm one of the judges for the Solve for Tomorrow competition. Also with us today is Sarah Washbrook from Technology Education New Zealand, currently waving. She's also a competition judge. And lurking in the background there is Michael Grimmer, who is a lead educator here at MOTAT. Some of you may have met him when he's out in schools with our STEM cells programs. Just a heads up that we will be recording this webinar and we will be posting it on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow website, and it will also be posted on the Technology Education New Zealand website for future reference. So we will start with a Wakatoki, actually. No, we won't. Because I'm at the end of the screen, let me stop sharing and we will go backwards. My apologies for this. Sorry, at the beginning here. We're going to start with a Wakatoki. He manako, tikora, ikore, ai means that crayfish are scarce when they are expected. Another way of saying that is don't count your chickens before they hatch. I've chosen this Wakatoki because it speaks to the idea of not rushing to your outcome, but rather taking the time to contemplate your starting point and to evaluate how well your result meets the stated need. And that is aligned with our topic for today, which is testing and evaluating. A reminder about the key dates and the timeline for the competition. As you can see, we are now all working towards the entry closing date of the 4th of September, which leaves you a little over 4 weeks to complete your projects. So hopefully you're all making good progress with your projects. A quick review of previous webinars. Webinar 2 focused on finding a problem and empathizing and defining that problem. Webinar 3 looked at ideating and developing a concept. And webinar 4 focused on prototyping and a little bit about stakeholder feedback. So today we're going to consider testing and evaluation at this end of the design process. We're going to cover the different ways you can test your prototype with stakeholders, the importance of recording your results, and ways to do that which make it easier for the judges to see what you have done. Along the way, I'll be using some examples from previous Solve for Tomorrow entries. And then lastly, we'll look at the competition scoring matrix and see where testing and evaluation fit into that. And you'll be able to see the relative importance that is placed on this part of your project. So onwards, testing a prototype. Firstly, why test? And it is simply to check that your product is suitable for your stakeholders and fit for purpose, both functionally and aesthetically. So how it looks and how it performs. So way back, you started with a problem and you identified some solutions. You selected one idea to develop further, and you developed a prototype which you think meets the need. Now you need to check that it actually does meet the need. So it's going back and revisiting your original problem, your original solutions, and making sure that your prototype is actually meeting that need. There are a couple of examples from previous projects which I'd like to share with you, and you can see them here. This one on the left-hand side is from Solve for Tomorrow 2021. It was a project called Beautify the Berms, and it sought to plant native fauna on berms to encourage bee populations. So the project owner in this case went out to their stakeholder groups with a proposed solution and got a whole bunch of feedback from them about what they felt might be some of the issues that and the problems that proposed solution raised. And it shows here that there were various ones that were identified, that the flowers might die on the berms, that it might encourage bees, which is ironic because that was what was designed to happen. that people might have allergies to the pollen. Where are the bins going to sit? So basically it raised a whole lot of issues for the project owner that he was then able to focus on and work around developing solutions for. I like the way that this was presented to the judges, because it was very easy for us to get a really good sense of the issues that have been identified and be able to visually see how they might be worked through in the presentation. The second example I want to show you is from Solve for Tomorrow 2022. It was a project called Brooklyn's Nighttime Hero. This solved the problem of children losing their comfort toys in bed by designing essentially a Velcro strap which held the toy in place. It was a very simple project, but it was really nicely put together and a really strong process following a design thinking process. So what you can see here on this slide is that the project owner has made very clear statements of the problems that they identified from their testing. So, the magnet is only attached by sellotape, so it could easily be removed, and swallowing a magnet has major health consequences. Really clearly stated, and a very strong indication of those are the problems that we're going to be worked through in the second prototype. There's lots of different ways that you can test your prototype, and I just want to speak to some of the more common methods that are out there. Feedback forms and surveys are very common, and they're very easy to implement. It's a great way to gather the opinions of your stakeholders because they can be distributed digitally, and it means you can reach a large number of people quite quickly. This example on the right-hand side here from the Beautify the Berms project was a survey that was created and posted onto Facebook, and there were over 400 responses within an hour. So really, really effective and simple way for that person just to get, a lot of people to comment on the particular thing that they are trying to develop. One of the disadvantages of feedback forms and surveys, though, is that they tend to be a kind of one shot and you're done data gathering. And by that, I mean that you have limited opportunity to gather deeper data about why your stakeholders responded the way they did. So, a person might give you a response in a feedback survey that it was good, but they're not telling you why it was good. There's a limited ability for you to gather that deeper information. So you might want to consider other methods of testing your prototype, and things like focus groups, workshops, and observations are other methods that you could use. They require a bit more work in terms of setting them up and coordinating them, but they do provide you with the ability to really talk to your stakeholders and to gain a deeper understanding of why they're responding the way they do. So it's gathering really rich data. The observation method here is actually especially powerful, as what this does is it sees the stakeholder testing the prototype in situ, so in an authentic context with real life conditions and constraints. And quite often you'll find that some of the issues that need to be resolved, some of the problems that need to be resolved, may only present themselves when you're testing your prototype in that real life situation. It might not necessarily have surfaced if you were in, say, a focus group talking about the prototype. So that's a really powerful method to use. You need to get as many people as possible to try your product and to give you feedback. And then you use the feedback to make changes in your design. Testing and redesigning the product based on your test results is called design iterations. And that is something that the judges are really keen to see evidence of, that you've worked through that process. Another aspect that I want to talk a little bit about is evaluating your outcome. I've used Brooklyn's Nighttime Hero as the example here, the exemplar here, because it was a very clearly presented way of communicating to the judges exactly what had happened. So you can see here, I've just taken 3 screenshots of 3 slides from a PowerPoint presentation, and you can immediately see here that there were 2 prototypes developed, before they landed on the final product. So straight away, I knew that there'd been some prototyping, some testing, and then some design iterations that happened as a part of that process. You can also see that they have revisited their original design brief and brought in their physical attributes and functional attributes that they established right at the beginning of their process, and that they have evaluated each prototype against those attributes as listed. And so they're trying to assess whether that prototype is actually fit for the purpose as they originally identified it. And what I particularly like about this presentation is that the use of a coding system, which very clearly indicates that an attribute has either been met or not met. So green meant that the attribute had been met, orange was that it was partially met, and red was that it was not met. And you can see just at a glance across these three different slides how the reds were addressed and they disappeared in future prototypes until by the time you got to the final prototype, it was green across the board and all of those attributes had been met. So really easy as a judge to look at this and get a sense of that process. It's been communicated very, very clearly to us. It's important that you record as much detail of your design process as possible because that's what we're making our judgments on and that's what we're scoring against. We can't obviously allocate marks for something that's not present in your presentation. So recording your changes is a critical part of doing well in this competition. There's lots of different ways that you can record your process. And it's entirely up to you how you do record those things in the background. But what I'd like to look at here is how you present that to us in a way that is able to communicate what can be quite a complex process in the clearest and simplest ways. Here are two methods from previous years' competition entries. The one on the left-hand side is from 2022. It was a project called Foil Blankets. And in this case, they sought to find a way to use chip packets, foil chip packets, and turn them into thermal blankets for homeless people. And you can see that they have presented a narrative. They've basically written down the story, the process that they went through, and captured it just as a block of text. And it's reasonably simple to read, and it gives you a good overview, or the judge a good overview of what they went through. Another example here is from Solve for Tomorrow 2022. This is a project called Pigtail Presentation. And this was a project where they were looking at, from memory, the metal stands that are used by farmers to hold up electric fence, the temporary metal stands that are used up to hold electric fence wire up, and the insulation around the curly bit at the top, which is what's called the pigtail. And they were looking at the issue of that insulation breaking down by UV and what solutions there might be for that. A really cool project. But you can see that they have presented their journey, if you like, as a part of a logbook. And this is just a screenshot of a page from their logbook. Again, a way of communicating the process that they have gone through. Both of these ways clearly show the elements of the journey, but I personally feel that one is slightly more easily understood than the other, but there is no requirement for you as a project owner to present one way or the other. A video, of course, is another medium which you might decide to use to show this or share this type of information with us. All right. What are we looking for when we are considering testing and evaluation, and where does it fit into the assessment matrix? Just a reminder that down here there is a QR code. If you scan that on your phones, it will take you straight to the assessment matrix for you to look at, so you can see clearly how we are allocating marks across the different strands. The testing and evaluation fits really into this feasibility criteria. It considers how useful the solution is to stakeholders and how feasible it is for the solution to be implemented into the community. And this is 30% of your project score. it breaks it down pretty much into 3 components of 10% each. So the first component is simply looking at the nature of the feedback you have gained through testing. So as a judge, I'm just looking to see that 1, you have tested, and B, that you have got some feedback through that testing process. And in this case, it's talking about whether it's positive feedback. In all honesty, it doesn't actually need to be positive feedback, because negative feedback can lead to great design iterations as well. So, the nature of the actual feedback, either positive or negative, but feedback definitely being there. That's 10% allocated to that. The second component is considering how easily your solution could be applied in the community. So, for example, is it a solution that is going to be acceptable from a kind of ethical point of view, or an environmental point of view? Is it sustainable? Is it something that people are likely to get on board with, or are there some issues around society's acceptance of this as a solution? And then the third component is it can be fully implemented with current technologies and resources. So this is when we're looking at things like, can it actually be manufactured? Could it be distributed? Could it be implemented in current communities? Or is it reliant on new emerging technologies for its implementation? For example, say, your product might have identified that you need to have some special material that is going to make it fit for purpose, and that material doesn't actually exist yet. So it would mean actually that it would score poorly on this part of the feasibility study. I'd like to give everyone, our participants, a chance to ask any questions if you have any, and possibly also for us to look at the chat there if there are questions sitting in there. So Sarah has mentioned the physical and functional attributes are the stage before writing a specification when understanding curriculum levels of the brief development strand in the New Zealand technology learning area, and looking at the impact on society. Sarah, I don't know if you want to leap in here and maybe speak to that more, or whether you feel it stands alone as a statement.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, please excuse me as I have a mental budgerigar in my background at the moment. Apologies. But if you're looking at the curriculum levels, and obviously because we have a range of people from primary up through to intermediate and secondary level, the curriculum levels 3, 4 really are basically looking at getting your students to write attributes and identifying the key attributes for your products that you're designing and developing. When you're moving into curriculum level 5 and above, these convert and change from key attributes into specifications. So the key difference is a specification is being based on research, and it is very specific, as it's probably highlighted as a specification. So it needs to have background research to help and support those specification points. And the idea of key attributes and specification points is they have been, and key attributes is they have been selected and chosen specifically for the purpose of testing, trialing, and evaluating.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'll pass back.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from participants? I'll give the standard teacher 3-second response time before we move on to the next slide. All right, okay. So just a reminder that there are a lot of resources available on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow website. These are all links that you could use from this presentation, or you could just go to the website itself and have a look at those. Obviously, at this point, we're working down this end of the resources that are available, but there is still time for people who are considering making an entry. You still have a month ahead of you if you jump right in now and get stuck in. And are very motivated, it's still feasible for you to put in an entry by that deadline. Carrying on, skipping a slide. This webinar has been recorded, and we are going to post it on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow website and the TENZ YouTube channel. You are able also to scan this bit.ly link, and it will give you a download, an automatic download on your phone of this entire webinar. So lastly, thank you for joining us for this webinar, and good luck with your projects in these remaining 4 weeks. Ka kite.